Hey guys, it's Libby. Welcome to Torathon. It is, I guess you could call it evening now. It's after 4:30. So it's evening on Friday, and I'm about to get started with The Only Harmless Great Thing, my first read of the Torathon. This is the new place. Earlier today I had to build my couch so that I would have something to read on, which got a little sweaty, but now we're ready to go. In this video, I and my spouse David will be reviewing everything that we read, and this year I'm going to start a playlist of not only all of my Torathon vlog / wrap-up material, but of everybody's Torathon vlog / wrap-up material that I can find. So I've already started this playlist with my vlog from last year, and I also have Maija, Rachel, and Kelsey's wrap-ups. So if you did one last year that I missed, or if you're doing this year, let me know and I'll add it to the playlist so that then we have like a compendium of reviews of short fiction from Tor.com, because it can be sort of hard to find reviews for things this short. And since there's like so much of it, you want some help weeding it out. Okay. Hey guys, welcome to the bedroom. So I am done with The Only Harmless Great Thing, and let me tell all of you out there that this is not a great book to start a readathon with, because it was a bummer. It also demands that you read it at a slower pace than you would probably normally read, for two reasons. One, part of this book is narrated by the like collective elephant consciousness, which uses odd phraseology that you have to ponder for a bit as you're reading, and also because one of the main characters is like dying slowly and terribly, which I find always makes me read slower, think slower. I think I might even be talking about it slower right now than I normally talk. So we have sort of three narrative threads in The Only Harmless Great Thing. One is of the elephant consciousness, which is narrating some events in the other two timelines, and also a large section of it is dedicated to telling the story of this like elephant folk heroine of this old woolly mammoth, who dug up the stories, capital S, and which is now common to all elephants, or at least female elephants. Then we have the story of our radium girl, who, let me back up a little bit. In the 1880s, humans became able to communicate with elephants through a form of sign language. So the elephants in this story are hyper intelligent. So humans and elephants can communicate, and then we have our radium girl who, the factory where she works has been shut down because all of the girls' jaws are falling off. And so most of them are dead in hospital, gone back home to die quietly. But she has stayed on to train the elephants, because the company has now hired elephants to paint the watch faces with the radium paint. Because since they are bigger, they will be poisoned by the radium slower and thus die slower. But they will still die. It's great. It's super fun. So she's training the elephants, and we get to know this one specific elephant, Topsy. And you know, things take a turn for the bad. Oh, there's a kitty. And then we have in the approximately modern day, another woman who is she's working for some like government thing, it seems like. We don't get a lot of details, but she is negotiating with the elephants, because the government, I think, wants to use the elephants to find, it's very unclear, but they want to make elephants able to glow in the dark. So like introduce something new into their genome, so they will glow in the dark in the presence of radioactivity. I think to help clean up nuclear waste, and the elephants are like, you want to do what now? So I thought this was all very interesting, very inventive, and well blended. I did like it, but I am finding it difficult to find good things to say about it because it's just so sad. Okay, I gave it 4 stars. I will now be moving on to Rogue Protocol and then on to Exit Strategy. And I am really hoping that I'm able to give one of these books 5 stars because I have not given a non-reread 5 stars at all so far this year. I think my only 5-star has been Richard II. And I'd really like to find a book that's really good. And I believe in Murderbot. I think Rogue Protocol might just be a 4-star. But I believe that the finale will wrap things up at a 5-star level. I got my fingers crossed. And let's just say I have some theories about what is going to be revealed in the finale about what went down previously. I'll let you know if I'm right in the vaguest of possible terms so as not to spoil it for the rest of you. So I'll see you probably tomorrow when I'm finished with Rogue Protocol. And welcome to Sunday morning. I spent all of Saturday getting through the last 2 Murderbots. So I will talk about those briefly. Of course, there's not a lot to say when you are avoiding spoilers for the second half of a series. So I will not describe the plots at all. As I suspected, I did give Rogue Protocol 4 stars. Unfortunately, I also gave Exit Strategy 4 stars. I am still in search of the new 5-star read of the year. I found the Exit Strategy was a little bit my fault because we returned to some side characters that appeared in the first Murderbot novella, and since it's been a year since I read that, getting to see them again was less meaningful for me. Although I think if you read them as they were published, there was about a year lag between the first one and the last one. But the third one, Rogue Protocol, I gave 4 stars because the way the first 2 were structured, the first half of the novella is mainly like Murderbot shenanigans, and then the last half is like, oh shit, gotta save the humans from evil fauna or other robots. And like the fun Murderbot shenanigans was not as fun. It was more focused on like technology and sort of like assembling the chess pieces, and less Murderbot complaining about how it doesn't get to watch the rise and fall of Sanctuary Moon, its favorite TV show. So that's all for my novellas. I'm now moving on to the short fiction from the website. So David and I will be back shortly with The Martian in the Wood. And it's David.
Hello.
We have just read The Martian in the Woods. And what I mean by that sentence is I have just read Martian in the Woods. David read it last night. Is that correct?
That's true.
Would you like to do a spoiler-free synopsis so people have some idea of what we're talking about?
Is it called The Martian in the Woods?
Oh, sorry, it's one wood.
Is it one
wood? Capital W wood.
Synopsis is that humans and Martians engage in a war. And then...
That's really the prologue.
Yeah, well, you said it had to be spoiler-free.
Yeah.
I think a challenge of this book is differentiating what is and is not a spoiler.
I agree.
That's a challenge. So a lot of heavy prologue-oriented synopsis.
Yeah.
There's a war, and some Martian warriors land in England, and then things get mysterious.
Especially in the wood.
They do land in a particular wood, and that wood gets real mysterious.
Well, my synopsis would be woman... have forgotten her name now. Xena, there we go. Her parents are killed during the war, which is very short. It is set in 1907-08. She is trapped in France during the war, gets home, discovers that her brother is behaving very weirdly and spending lots of time in the woods.
Sure.
She goes to investigate.
That does happen.
Okay. What did you think?
I can't say that I was that impressed. I think that the sort of premise and the story itself were fairly interesting. I didn't love the way that it was written.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think the prose was that great. A little sloppy sometimes, I felt like. And sort of as we discovered in our attempt to form a synopsis, there's a lot of exposition that's necessary to make this happen. Like a lot of exposition. And it's hard to do exposition well, and it's handled okay, but I think it's maybe more than the author is really prepared to deal with.
I disagree that it's handled okay. I actually...
Well, I'm trying to be nice.
I think I enjoyed the prose more than you.
Okay.
That said, I consider myself to be a terrible judge of modern prose, but I liked it for what it's worth. The one thing we left out of the synopsis is that this is narrated by the sister-in-law of one of the side characters for no reason. She's not involved. The brother of the side character is not involved either. I think everything would have been a lot clearer if we had a heterodiegetic narrator. I think that would have shortened things up in the initial really long exposition-y section. I hesitate to even call it an exposition section.
Again, it's very...
Because exposition...
There's so much exposition.
Explains to you what's going on. But I was mainly just very confused by the beginning.
Well, also, like, the beginning...
I would have started at 1,000 words in.
The first 8 is maybe exposition, the first 10th or 8th. And probably 50% of the rest of it is exposition. There's a lot of exposition. I understand the sister-in-law character as, I think, a somewhat successful attempt to make the story kind of more naturalistic. You know, there's sort of this archival aesthetic that gets attached onto it.
Why not just have Walter Jenkins, the brother-in-law?
Yeah.
Why not just have it be his notes?
The real issue is that the story doesn't really make that much sense.
Right.
And a lot of it doesn't make that much sense, which is okay. And at several points in the story, the narrator is like, you know how this doesn't really make sense? Well, that's fine.
Because Walter Jenkins was wacky.
It's fine. And so they're really emphasizing how, well, there's a lot of... They have to have plausible deniability for the narrator to say, yeah, I don't know why that happened or what was going on there. That doesn't really make any sense, but that's what happened. Yeah. And so because it's a very detached narrator, they can get away with that. I'm pretty sure that's what the deal is.
Okay. I still think it would have been better. You would have had fewer problems if you had cut this narrator, although your one problem would have been bigger. And so getting down to what the actual story is about, I have not decided whether or not the explanation for what's going on makes any sense at all. There's this long exposition section in the beginning, which we don't really learn anything, and then we get into the actual story with Xena and her brother, and you know, it's building in a sort of natural way that you would expect a standard narrative to, and Xena makes some discoveries, and then she talks to this Walter Jenkins guy who is a Martian sociologist or biologist or something, Martian enthusiast, and he explains things to her, but he's a little bit of a wacky dude. And once we got into the actual Xena and her brother story, I was quite enjoying that. And then we got the explanation, and I was like, what?
This might be too spoiler. I don't think so.
There may be an awkward cut here.
Just to be clear, when Livy says Walter explains things, but he's kind of weird, basically what happens is Xena describes a series of very, very weird phenomenon. And Walter Jenkins says, yeah, that makes sense, because I'm pretty sure... That's basically how the conversation goes. He doesn't really explain anything about anything. He's like, yep, Martians are crazy. So, and that's pretty much where we end the story. Spoiler alert, perhaps, on that one. Doesn't get better.
So, what did you rate this? Out of 5 stars.
Out of 5 stars.
Yes.
Well, I know you can't do half stars. So
no, that's on Goodreads, on my channel.
Okay.
And on BookTube, we express half stars.
Okay. Sorry.
Although we are limited in our star vocabulary by Goodreads.
I've heard about that. I'll say 1 3/4 stars.
Oh, wow. So my initial, first thing I'm going to do on Goodreads, I actually rated it 4 stars.
Wow.
But that is based on my ability to ignore the fact that it does not make sense. If you don't care about your plots making sense...
Yeah.
I think you can
It's
enjoy
okay.
this.
There's nothing. It's a little long, I think. And there's going to be a lot of exposition that's sort of trying to make something make sense.
When I was reading,
doesn't.
my first 10 minutes of reading it, I was like, oh god, this is 2 stars. But then once we actually got into the story, I was enjoying it more.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed it a lot more than I liked it. You might say.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun, and I don't want to spoil anything, but it has some parts of it that were like, well, this doesn't make any sense, but it's cool.
It's
I
cool.
want some more. This is cool. Let's just
Yeah.
keep digging. Fine, but no, it's not going to work for me.
Okay. Okay.
Nope.
It is not good, but it is enjoyable. Would you suggest that other people read it?
Again, it's long. It's definitely the
Not that
longest
long.
of the stories that you sent me.
It's 16,000 words.
Yeah, okay, not like a long story, but I think they have better things to do with their time.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Okay. So this was not good, but maybe you should still read it.
There are definitely worse things.
Okay. We'll see you again soon.
Bye.
And we're back to talk about Peter S. Beagle's story of Caillou. Have you read any Peter S. Beagle before?
I don't know.
Okay. I think he's most famous for writing the novel The Last Unicorn, which people just slightly older than us experience as a major feature of their childhood. The film was very big.
Is it about Scotland?
I don't think so. I think it's set in a fantasy world.
Got it.
I haven't read it though. So, do you want to give a synopsis, a spoiler-free synopsis?
Okay. A judge in China is guided by a heavenly creature, and their relationship is tested.
That's pretty good. The heavenly creature is a unicorn, for when we make reference to it later.
Sure. Let's go with that.
Chilin, what did you think of it?
I thought it was fairly well written. I liked the writing style. I thought it was good. Clearly it was going for kind of the fable aesthetic.
Yeah, it's very
Maybe
strong.
a little heavily-handed.
It's very folkloric.
Maybe a little heavy-handed in that, but still pretty well executed.
Did you read Beagle's little opening paragraph where he said, I was going for like a real traditional old school Chinese fairy tale?
Which is fine, but if that's the thing, I don't know if that's the thing that this is a good environment. It's a short story to a short story. Have fun with it, I guess. But I don't know. I think that's a tool that you should only kind of bring out when you're pretty comfortable with it. It doesn't come out that well in its practice form, but that's okay. I thought that was a pretty good execution. The story itself, I think, left me feeling unsatisfied. I was pretty unhappy with the ending. Didn't really resolve anything. I guess you might call it predictable. I guess it's kind of hard to say. Not really a clear moral. So an okay, decently well written story, but as a fable, I don't think it quite succeeds.
You think it was a little too neo whatever in its messaging?
Yeah, it's like,
which
well,
didn't really match up with
it's like, but
structure?
try to take a kind of a modern spin on it. A couple, not too subtly, which is fine, and sort of a modern ethic, which is fine. Maybe doesn't fit that well with sort of the ethical quandary that the story fits, and that's a fine space to explore. But I don't really feel like we came to a strong resolution there. Again, as a fairy tale with a moral, I don't really think there is a moral here, and I don't really think we've given us a structure
Beyond
to build one.
just don't.
Or do. I guess.
There's definitely some don'ts.
Yeah,
in there.
I mean, I guess, but that's not really ever proven.
Okay.
What's more important? The momentary joy of passion or the long-term joy of fidelity? What's more important? Who is to say? That's a good point.
So, what did you rate it? Would you rate it?
I would give this 2.5 stars.
Okay. I gave it like a 3.25, which I realized was a problem for my previous rating because I did like it better than Martian in the Woods, so I had to go back and revise that to being a 3-star. Okay. See you in a bit.
Okay.
So we're back with Faster Gun by Elizabeth Bear, which is about a recon/diplomatic mission to a spaceship in the Old West. Is that an appropriate synopsis?
I guess.
What did you think of it?
Thought it was okay. To me, it seems really clearly rooted in tabletop role-playing games. I'm pretty certain that's really the aesthetic that it's trying to evoke, and it evokes that aesthetic pretty well. I think as a story, I found the premise a little confusing and maybe a little inconsistent.
I agree. It does start in terms of formatting. You get chapter 2 first, and then you get chapter 1.
Sure.
So,
I mean, at first it's kind of just an Old West tale, and then there's like magic, and then there's
a moon man,
also aliens, and also time travel, and maybe some other stuff, and these elements are not rolled out with a lot of preparation. They kind of just throw them at you, and that's okay, I guess. But I think that we just kept getting new elements of speculative fiction mixed in. Didn't really give the world a lot of meaning. And the early elements, we kind of get the magic. Oh, it's Old West, but there's magic. Oh, but there's also aliens, and there's like time travel, and it's just a bunch of stuff is happening, and that there's this much craziness in the world, but that everything is still basically the same. That element doesn't quite feel right to me.
I agree. My main reaction at all points of reading this was, why is this happening? None of the action seemed motivated. I also did not really like the prose in this one, and not just the Old Westiness of it, but even aside from that sort of vernacular, there was some amateurness to I think some of the descriptions.
I thought the prose was okay. To me, what kind of stood out, if we're looking for flaws in the writing, would be the action scenes themselves. I did not really connect with. I found them confusing. It was difficult.
I started to skim the action scenes. Just read the dialogue.
It was difficult to keep up with. There's only really 2 real action scenes, and in both of them,
there's like 7 characters.
It's a lot of stuff going on, and it's not very easy to follow. And I went back and said, I'm going to try to read them more carefully. And even when you do try to follow along, it's just not presented in a way that's very natural. And their resolution is
not a resolution.
Not very good. Like the action scene, there's like a fight, and then at the end of the next.
Spoiling it now.
Oh, I'm spoiling it. Okay, well you can cut this part out.
So I think we give this a not recommend.
Yeah, again, if I remember when I did a lot of tabletop role playing, I would think, I wish there were more short stories that were just like descriptions of tabletop role-playing sessions and done as a nice story.
This is not something I have felt the need of.
Sure. So if that's something you feel the need of, this I think is effort to do that. And because I don't think there's as much work in that space outside of Forgotten Realms as there should be, I think that there's some experimentation is going to be needed to find the right form there.
Okay. What did you rate it?
I think I'd give it 2 stars.
I would also give it 2 stars. We agree.
Yeah. I wish we had just picked one of the speculative aspects and kind of stuck with it and integrated it more into the story and maybe dug into it more. I think that definitely would have been better.
So notice we're sort of having the same problem with Elizabeth Bear that we had with Charlie Jane Anders last time, which is the person that I've chosen to read the most stuff from turns out to not be very good. This is the first Elizabeth Bear we've read here, but I've also read The Horrid Glory of Its Wings earlier, which was again a lot of why is this happening, and not great prose. So we have another 3 on the list. I think my plan is to just read The Girl Who Sang Rose Madder, which is the shortest and had the most interesting premise of the 3 that's left. And if that's really excellent, then I will consider the other 2. And as it turns out, this will be the last read of the Torathon, The Girl Who Sang Rose Madder by Elizabeth Bear. So, first off, in fairness to this was really not targeted at me. This is a short story about a woman who had been in a rock band in the 70s and 80s. It was very famous along the lines of Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones. which is just so very not my scene. I've maybe heard one song by Led Zeppelin, probably two by the Rolling Stones. So I was definitely not able to appreciate it to the full extent that it could have been appreciated, but I'm not sure that extent was very far to begin with. What did you think, David?
I actually liked it.
Okay.
I thought it was distinctly better than the other stories that we read today.
Okay. What did you like about it?
Well, I liked how...
Are you a fan of Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones?
I'm not a big fan of Led Zeppelin per se. I'm not a huge fan of the Rolling Stones. I have kind of polarized opinions about them. I don't know. I don't think the story was that rooted in a particular aesthetic. I think you could substitute your Viking metal bands and the principles would all still follow just okay. Except, they could be really, really popular.
I do not have any, but I have one Viking metal band.
Started with 0, and then we did get to 1. Okay. But I think that I liked that I felt like the speculative aspect was more naturally integrated with the story. I think that's what the story's goal was to sort of not let you in on exactly what was going on, and then to sort of see how smoothly it could jump it on you. And I thought I did that pretty well. I think this was like a bad episode of Black Mirror, which is still pretty good, all things considered.
Update from last Torathon when David compared another short story to an episode of Black Mirror. I still have not seen any Black Mirror.
Yeah, I think my biggest criticism of the story is that it doesn't really leave you with any new idea. I think that's sort of my criticism of the day. Not a lot of new ideas. I see a lot of stories trying to be entertaining and to sort of check the ideological and stylistic boxes that people expect, but I want to see more stories that have their own idea, that are countering a popular perception of what's good or what's cool. And I felt like this story was really at its heart a pretty standard kind of sentimental story, and then it had a kind of fantastical twist. And the fantastical twist was well executed, and that's good enough for me in my book. But I don't feel like that actually integrated in with the story at all.
I didn't object to the fantastical twist, but there was just so little else there.
Yeah, I wish that more work had been done to sort of explain the characters' transition and why they felt differently and why this fantastical element really changed their mind, because we really didn't get a lot of detail on that. But again, I'm just here for solid speculative logic, and it didn't have any big problems in that sense. So, okay.
Well done, Ms. Bear. So how'd you feel about this Torathon?
Yeah, I think that it's nice that we got stories set in a lot of different places.
I did notice that. We had quite a tour of the world.
But a lot of stories that seem to be just showing off some characters as opposed to really telling a story and showing us something about their life or their world that should change the way I live my life. I didn't really learn anything. No one really presented any ideas that challenged me. I was like, yep, this story seems to sort of fit in with what people think, and it's vaguely entertaining, but that's not enough. I want some punch, some controversy.
Do you want to pick the stories next time?
I'm not in charge. I want to do whatever makes you happy.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for watching. They will see you next year. Or maybe we'll do Torathon twice this year.
I can be in other videos if
I'm
you want.
thinking about it, guys. I don't know.
It's all good.
You're going to have to read some books, babe.
I know, that's how I get you.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see ya.